Hi guys, so today I'm making potato bread from War Economy and Food from 1918. Please ignore my dirty cutting board. But here's the recipe in case anybody wants to see that. I did start with 2 tablespoons of lukewarm water. It does call for 1/8 to 1/4 of a yeast cake. Yeast cakes are unbelievably hard to find in stores, at least where I live. I did find a conversion chart online that I will post the link to in the description. So I ended up using about 2 1/4 teaspoons of dry active yeast. Not in the video, I did add a little bit of honey just to kind of feed that yeast a bit. I then added about 1 1/4 cups of packed mashed potatoes to my bowl. I then added about 1 1/2 teaspoons of salt. I did eyeball that a bit, and went ahead and added my 1/4 cup of flour and my yeast mixture. That big brown blob that comes out right there, that is the honey that I decided to add, and I began just to give that a good mix. I did speed up this process a bit in the video just for everybody's sake. Once I thought it was well enough incorporated, I did grab a towel and I covered my bowl and I placed that in a warm place on top of my stove and let that rest. At this point, I was just kind of checking the consistency of it. It was almost fluffy, like a whipped frosting. I then added in the rest of my flour. The recipe does call for 2 1/4 cups of flour, but I started with 1 1/2 cups, and I decided not to add any more just because I thought it was going to be too dry. So at this point, my 5-year-old daughter, she wanted to help, and she began mixing in the rest of the flour with the dough. So please enjoy as she gets her hands dirty. So the incorporation of the rest of the flour into the dough did take a little bit of time, so I ended up taking over. At this point, the dough was almost a Play-Doh consistency. It was very stiff, as the recipe said it would be. I formed it into a cute little ball and placed it back into my bowl, covered it with my towel, and placed it back on my stove to let it rise again for about 2.5 hours. At this point, it was much like a cookie dough consistency. I did decide to grease my trusty bread pan with a little bit of avocado oil. Here I am spreading that around a bit. I then transferred my dough over to my bread pan and tried to spread that out a bit. Because it was still a little bit stiff, it was kind of hard to spread out. Finally, once it was spread out to my liking, I did cover it with a towel again and let that rise for about 2 more hours. Here you can see it had risen some. I decided to bake it at 350 for about 25 minutes until it was golden brown. And I let it cool for about 15 minutes before cutting into it. And here you can see it actually didn't turn out too bad. It was actually pretty fluffy in the center. Now, my daughter was extremely excited to try it. So here we go. We go in for our first bite. And it really wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. And she liked it. So that's a plus. So thank you for watching.